welcome on behalf of the members of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. From Trenton to you, I'm your host, New Jersey State Senator Ronald Rice, and Chairman of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. You know, when I was growing up in the city of Newark, there were many services provided within our city, and when you went to other cities, you had the same type of services. The one thing that's very important to those of us in the Legislative Black Caucus is health care. As you know, we've had many guests on the show to speak about health care, about Obamacare, about hospital situation, mental health, etc. But we never really get a chance to talk about those who have to respond to you in case of a health care emergency, or maybe other types of emergencies as well. And so years back, we had the Velsburg Ambulance Corps, we had the North Ward Volunteer Ambulance Services, and we had the Ironbine. I believe today the Ironbine services still exist, but the others went out back in the 80s, and I remember those days. In fact, the Velsburg Ambulance Corps was working and operating when I first became the councilman in the city of Newark in 1982. Since then, there's been a demise of organizations because these are volunteer organizations. They really don't get funding unless you support them with your funds or with your volunteerism. In other communities throughout the state of New Jersey and throughout the country, the only services they do have in terms of emergencies are the volunteer services, whether it's EMS, whether it's fire services, and in some cases, police services. And so we're going to have that conversation today about Safety First. In fact, Safety First is the name of the organization whose founder is here today, and that's Mr. David Morgan. And so I would hope that you would take the information that he's providing to you today and share the information. I would hope that you find out and he would tell you how to get in touch with him and volunteer your services. I also know that there's always a need for nonprofit organizations to have funding. I would hope that you will consider helping them with the funds if you can by making small contributions or whatever you can have. But what's most important is that you get the information and you use it and you share it with your neighbors and your families and your friends and all the folk that you interact with in church and your Masonic lodges and all the other locations and organizations you're involved with. So with that, let's turn to Mr. David Morgan, who is the founder of Safety First. And we're going to do as we always do on this program. We're going to ask David if he would be so kind as to tell us a little bit about little David Morgan, the little guy that grew up. I believe he's a Newarker. If not, he is one now. But he'll tell you about all that too. David, thank you very much for coming on the program. On behalf of the members of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, I know we had a conversation prior to you coming on the program. I was very intrigued with the kinds of things that you're doing, and that's why I think it's very important that our community share that information. And as I told you before, wherever the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, and myself in particular as chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, can be helpful to you in your growth and getting information out, we're going to try to do that. So tell us about David Morgan.
David Morgan was born here in Newark. David Morgan was raised here in Newark. And young David Morgan had no idea that his future was set here in Newark. I grew up in the Colonnades back on Broad Street. And once upon a time, young David Morgan, as all children did, was playing out in the playground with all the other children and discovering the things that we discover as children in the playground. My discovery that day happened to be a wild mushroom that was growing in the grass next to the playground. And my friends and I thought it would be a great idea if we decided to see what happens if you eat a wild mushroom. And so young David Morgan discovered the emergency services at a very young age, because young David Morgan ate that mushroom and got very, very sick. Young David Morgan's mother was not happy with him when she had to call an ambulance to take him to a hospital because he became violently ill with an adverse reaction to this wild mushroom. And so my story begins here with life here in Newark and my career here in Newark at a very young age. And so very interestingly enough, as I grew older here in Newark, that future became formed with a more solid foundation. My mother and I remember standing out at the bus stop at the Broad Street train station, and it was raining one night, and a motorcyclist lost control of his bike and slid his bike into the column right next to where we were standing. And I remember being about 5 years old and standing in the crowd of people watching, because Everyone watched. No one actually helped. And finally, an ambulance came and took care of that man. And so it reminded me of the time that I needed an ambulance. And so that sat with me, and the seed was then planted. The seed, I guess, the mushroom seed, if mushrooms had seeds, which grew and grew and grew to me becoming where I am today. But my experiences in healthcare continued in first and second hand all the way until I became part of the healthcare experience.
That's a good story, particularly mushroom. All of us kind of roam into areas to eat things that we shouldn't be eating.
Yes.
We used to eat the apples off the tree. Some was good, some was bad. We used to pull wild onions. You know, Newark at one time on those same streets you're talking about, where the grass was, wild onions was growing in them. So we used to take them and eat the balls and stuff like that. Thank God we didn't have to have the EMS, the EMTs to come and get us and the ambulance. But it is a good experience, because I always tell people every experience is for a reason in life.
Yes.
It may be good, it may be bad, but it's for a reason. And you learn from those experiences. And oftentimes those experiences put you in a position that many of us are in today that we never thought we would be in, because I'm sure little David Morgan, like many of you out there who are viewing the program, never thought he would be involved with EMS or EMT services, or even riding bikes or doing some of the things he's going to talk about. He didn't tell you about the bike thing, but that's going to come up in a moment. You know, and I would suspect, and he can talk more about this, that those are some of the things that make him so deeply rooted in Newark. But we're going to raise that question to him again to see if there are other things that kind of help him to become rooted and want to be deeply rooted in the town that he grew up in and was born in. I think that's important. But I can ask him one question. Dave, you live on Broad Street, Colonnades, or you live on one across from the park on Clifton Avenue?
No, it was the Broad Street
Okay.
Colonnades, and that is where I spent the first 5 years of my life. And then we moved to the North Ward of Newark, where I spent my years until I was a teenager. And then we moved to the West Ward of Newark, where I have lived since high school until today. Proud to say that I live right around the corner from Senator Rice.
And we're glad to have him there, and I'm glad I don't have to call him, okay, for that. But we're going to get him involved some other ways too. But and the reason I raised that was interesting, Dave, because you're younger than I am, and you may recall, you may have been too young to remember, when there was the North Ward Ambulance Squad, and that was Tony Imperielli. And Tony was something else, you know, between the Detective Bureau and all that, but he was very committed. And so was the North Ward Center. So tell me a little bit more. Is there anything else to kind of entrench you into the city that you love so much?
It's interesting that you mentioned the North Ward Volunteer Ambulance Squad, because young David Morgan grew, as children tend to do. And when we moved to the North Ward, I remember one day riding my bicycle down the sidewalk, as children did, and unfortunately I hit a patch of concrete that was not as smooth as it could have been, and my bike went over. And young David Morgan went over with the bike and found himself bleeding on the ground. And young David Morgan went home again to his mother, and his mother again was not happy as he came home showing his bloody hand to his mother, who then had to call the ambulance again, except this time it was the North Ward Volunteer Ambulance Squad that came, and one of my neighbors was on that ambulance squad. His name was Hiram, and he lived up the street from me, and I knew him from the neighborhood and didn't actually know that that's one of the other things that he did, which was work on this ambulance squad. And seeing that friendly face was something that made this traumatic experience a lot easier to handle. It even made my mother feel better, because it was one of her neighbors that she knew well that was taking care of me. And so my experiences in Newark, they run deep, which is why here today I am still in Newark and trying to do as much as I can for this city, which has done so much for me.
So David, let me just say this to you as one who's sitting here listening, as all our viewers. You were a danger to yourself growing up, and probably a pain to your mother, you know, in terms of crashing all the time. And I'm just wondering, you know, as you look at your path, the path that led you to emergency medical services, and you can talk even more about that if you want to, I'm starting to get the feeling that you like the sound of sirens. You know, it seemed like you like to hear this truck coming up there, so you just went out there and just found ways to get the sirens to roll down the street. And that's not true, is it?
Not a bit. You know, when you are the one in need of sirens, that is the sound that you want to hear. But sirens do mean that there is something wrong for someone somewhere. And so it's never a good sound. However, it's always good to know that that sound is there because someone will come. And so my experiences growing up led me to need those sirens more and more. I went to school here in Newark, grade school as well as high school. And in high school at St. Benedict's one day while running track outside, one of my classmates went down and had a seizure. And I had to be no more than 13 years old watching my classmate in need. And again, I go back to that moment of being young and seeing an injured motorcyclist and feeling helpless. And that was the moment that I told myself and agreed and contracted with myself that I wouldn't feel helpless anymore. I would no longer be the one standing, not knowing what to do. And as a result of seeing that, I took my very first aid course. And after taking a first aid course, I decided to take a lifeguarding course. And after taking a lifeguarding course, I decided to continue on in my training. And it's funny how my beginnings come around back to where I am. Later on, we'll talk about how that motorcycle crash, today I ride an emergency medical services motorcycle. But there was a path to get to where I am today, and it all started with a mushroom, a motorcycle accident, a seizure, later on watching a drowning, all of the things that I experienced and all of those sirens that eventually did come brought me to where I am today.
And so to our viewers, understand out of all he said, what's really important is when he said there was a pathway. In all of our lives, there are pathways. We just have to have the sight to see it, or the intuition, if you will, to know it's there. I think that's important. There was a pathway the way he is. He's doing positive things. But there was also issues getting there, getting hurt, motorcycle, which he's going to talk about, which is a good segue, by the way, into this whole question and issue of starting your own business. David, tell us, how did you start your own business? Because I think that's important for young people to know in particular, because many people want to know what they're going to do. Some people want to start businesses, whether they are nonprofit businesses or whether they're for-profit businesses. But give us that pathway into what you are doing now.
So as I said, I became a lifeguard, and lifeguarding was a great way for a young person to earn some money. And as a teenager, it was a fantastic thing. However, one day at the pool, a young girl went underwater, and we were able to bring her up, but she needed more care. And that more care was, again, that ambulance. And that day was the day that my next step in my path became clear, that I needed to be the person on the ambulance. And I took the emergency medical technician training course, and I became a state certified EMT, and I worked for a volunteer ambulance squad, and I felt amazing being able to give back and to save lives. Because I became an EMT, I had a certain skill set. I knew how to do CPR, I knew how to provide care, and I was trained to do that. And I had the idea that I could provide training as well. Coincidentally, it was time for me to go to college, and as most young people realize, college costs, and I needed to earn a living. And what I was able to do was to make money teaching CPR and first aid and eventually lifeguarding to people in the area. And that helped me pay for my education. But at the same time, it gave me the stepping stones for my future. The company Safety First that I founded back when I was a freshman in college as a means to help me pay my college tuition is going on 27 years old today. And so that thing that started just as something to help me get better, do better, and survive is something that has given me the ability to help others do that. Safety First has trained thousands of people over the years, many of them young people who have become lifeguards, and I hope that are following in a very similar path that I followed. And that takes us today into where I'm trying to go with Safety First in training more people and providing more care, which ultimately means saving more lives.
You know, interesting enough, let me just remind our young people out there, because you watch TV and you see lifeguards, and I call them the beach boys many times, walking around, all the little pretty ladies around them and stuff. You gotta learn how to swim first, okay? So I don't know if David teaches swimming, but he teaches lifeguarding. So if you know how to swim, give David a shout out. If you don't know how to swim, talk to David. If he don't teach you how to swim, he can find someone that can teach you, but get in the water. David, let me ask you a question before we move on, because you mentioned something that's probably becoming more important now than it has ever before, with so many different things happening. Should everyone take a course in CPR? And if so, why?
There was an amazing study done in Seattle, Washington, where they provided CPR training for free to the community, and what they discovered is less people died, more lives were saved. And so it's something that really doesn't need statistics. It just needs some common sense to think, if we trained more people, we could save more people. And so the answer is wholeheartedly yes. Everyone should take some kind of safety training, whether that is a CPR class or a first aid class or something called bleeding control. Depending on how much time you have to take training, there is something that you can take which can help you help someone else.
So if someone wanted to take some of those types of things, your entity train, if folk didn't have money to pay for training, do people like yourself go to the churches and put
as
together
we look at resources, we also want to look at the
training
ability
that people can enhance later by coming to organizations like
Question
yours?
is, what has
Do they
been
go to the
some of the
firehouse?
most challenging,
I mean,
or one of
where
the most
do
challenging
people
issues
actually
that you
find
had to
training?
address, or
Because I
you've
think it's
seen
very
since you've been
important,
here
particularly
for EPA
today,
Yeah,
for
so-
folks who
so
are interacting with seniors
I'll just
in the
be
buildings,
in terms of
including
Region
seniors,
2,
okay?
part of the
But
challenge
also
has
for
been
young
responding
parents,
to storm
because
events.
young parents
That's
today
been a
don't have
challenge
the
in-
old
in
grandmother way, and there's so much they don't know about little things, a minor
Particularly,
cut, you know, how to treat it. It's an important thing like that.
missed here before
Someone
Sandy.
choking,
So that that devastated
milk
my
or
region.
bone or
My
whatever.
parents were homeless.
Where do
Six
you
of my
get
counties were in
training
states of
really? And we can talk about your business too, but in general, put aside
emergency.
now
We had 8 feet.
the pay for.
And
Where do people
Yeah.
go?
Of course, before we go, I know time's getting short.
I never
want to
hear
talk
Already?
about
in
some
our community
real life issues,
the
okay?
folk
'Cause I
quick
definitely want to
saying,
talk
look,
about, you know, the
we come
approach
to
to clean up
UVSO
the Sig
tomorrow,
River and
and
that
we give me
stuff,
this. We hear
as
about a
well
lot
as
of
the
free
Down
things, a
Acolyte
lot of pay
situation.
things.
But talk first
that's
about
the
the
one
EPA on
area
the
we don't
ground
hear
and
about,
the way you
unless you
get
cut the
involved
TV
communities.
on.
Yeah, so
Okay.
EPA's
So talk a little
engagement
bit about
is
that for
very
our viewers.
comprehensive.
You
So
are
we
completely
talked about
correct
science
with
and the
that.
rule of law.
It's the
But that only
horrible
goes so
concept
far.
of that
So
there
at some
is
point,
nothing for
you're going to have
free.
to take
And
your knowledge, your
training has
understanding, your
always
scientific
had a
knowledge,
cost to it. There are
your
communities
understanding rules
where
and
there is
regulations and guiding
free
statutes,
training, where
and
you
you've
can
got to
go
help
to your
people
local
understand how that works.
firehouse, you can go to your local hospital, you can go to your local community organization, and you can get free training. Sadly, we don't have much of that here in our great city of Newark
Right.
yet. We are getting it, but it's hard to find. You will find a community group or a church group that will offer a training to the people that come to that community group or to that church, but it's not widespread.
how are the
and
water
it's not
levels
well
responding?
known. And so you are correct that it's
So to the extent
hard
that we can
to
engage the
find
communities along the river,
available training
irrespective
for
of
people that
color,
don't
irrespective
have
of income.
financial resources. Some people are able to pay for training, and they do. Some people are able to find others to pay for it for them. There are companies that will pay for their employees to take training. There are schools that will pay for their school teachers to take training. However, we don't have a lot that's open for our community, anyone who just wants to take a class. And we all should be able to do that. And part of what we'll be talking about today is how we're going to make that happen.
So let's talk about the hows. Let's talk about the humble beginnings. What is Safety First doing these days? And I guess what you're doing these days is really teaching the hows and et cetera. So why don't we talk about that? What is Safety First doing these days?
So Safety First, after so many years of being here in Newark and taking advantage of Newark by just being here and growing here and becoming what was a college freshman's dream into an adult's livelihood, I believe that it's important that we give back. And so there's a lot that we can give. I said earlier that there isn't a lot that's free, but there's a lot that can be free. We at Safety First here in Newark can give free training to the residents of our city. And so one of the things that we committed to do is to provide free training to the residents, and we're starting with the West Ward because that's where we're located. We want to train as many people as we possibly can. I'm hoping that our humble beginnings of this program grow into something magnificent, like the humble beginnings of Safety First grew into something today. What we have already begun doing is providing free CPR training. We started training high school seniors at the Metz Charter School in the West Ward. Our goal with our free training programs is to not just have us train people in CPR or first aid. We want to train people to be CPR and first aid instructors, sort of like the ambassadors of care, so that they can then help us by going out and providing more training. The more people we train, as I said earlier, are the more lives that we can save. And so we have a grand plan at Safety First to do a lot of safety initiatives in Newark. One of those safety initiatives is training, free training to the community members of the West Ward, and it's available now.
You know, David, and this is why, as a senator representing the West Ward in the district, you know, I want to work with you to try to help with some things because I think you need to grow your business. That's a business side, but on the nonprofit side, we need to help you grow that too, because the one thing I have a lot of discussions about and with when I meet with people at the RJWJ, we call them St. Barnabas system, and they merged. We stay with the old name. But when I talk to Barry and the folk at the board meetings that we attend, I'm always talking about how do we get more people involved with healthcare, particularly young people today. You're talking about money, and that's where the money is today. Even though the artificial intelligence and robotics are coming into it, there's still a need. And we talk about the fact that back in the day, many of us who are older remember, and many of our viewers who are older remember what we call candy stripers. These were little girls, basically, that had the red and white uniform, little stripes on them, that went to the hospitals and learned about the environment, if you will, and some things about healthcare. And many of them decided as they grew older, because they weren't afraid of the language, they weren't afraid of the facilities, they understood the need, wound up being nurses and doctors. Mm-hmm. That's gone. And so it's hard to get folk back into those areas. We talk about vocational education, but if you go into the vocational high schools, you really don't see those kinds of programs. You may see a program, so we're going to teach you CPR, but that's just in passing in the gym class or the health class. But I think even the whole curriculum of what you were talking about may be good for high schools, even if it's after high schools, because Westside High School, which is in the West Ward, we need, maybe if you haven't talked to the principal, maybe we should set it up and talk to that person about some training, because a lot of those young men and women, like others in the rest of the schools in the city of Newark and throughout the state, are looking for directions. They don't think enough about health care, or they get frightened. But if they can have the experience you had, not getting hurt, but helping someone that's hurt, okay, then they start to sense the need, and therefore they understand that the academic side of it is not so painful because they understand it. If they start to volunteer and interact with EMT organizations, EMS organizations like yours, the language become, kind of just normal language to them when you start talking about an artery or stop the bleeding and the kinds of language you use. And when you do those kinds of things, or give me this, okay, or give me that. So that's something we need to talk about, because I think that's a good way, particularly when it comes to the black community and the brown community. It's a good way to get, I think, some folk involved in healthcare so we can build that relationship. So hopefully after the program, as we get together within the community, we can maybe have a meeting one day and maybe talk more about what you're doing and your vision for what you're doing. And maybe I can interject some things that make sense that we can do collectively in terms of getting other people involved.
Yes.
I know UVSO, Unified Veterans Service Organization, which is located in the Westwood of Newark, has a new director, the executive director. I watched her grow up in Newark as a young lady, also a young girl, and her mother was very active. I believe she's looking for new directions. We have in the city of Newark, Dr. Diane Hill over at Rutgers University started, a whole Fairmont, we call it Fairmont project, in a certain area of the Westwood, Fairmont area, where there's a lot of collaboration taking place for a lot of nonprofit organizations who probably never even thought about, connecting with people like you and your organization for training that can be passed on as part of the service they're offering to the clientele that they have and the participants. So we need to have more conversation on that. With that being said, let me get back to you. Throughout the state of New Jersey, there are a lot of organizations, but the organizations I run across, whether for profit, nonprofit, really located in a lot of rural communities, suburban communities. Of course, there's a greater need there, particularly in rural communities, because of the lack of entities that's providing a real business there. Small police departments, no hospitals and things like that, no fire departments. So we get that, but they all pretty much operate the same way. Is there a difference? And if so, what makes Safety First somewhat unique in what you do or not do? Okay.
I think what makes us unique is, as you mentioned earlier, the pathway. My path was made clear to me. And so it got me each step of the way in this journey. And this is what I believe is our next steps now, is to look towards the future. And so you'd mentioned what we lost in terms of giving young people the opportunities in healthcare to become more comfortable in healthcare. So if we at Safety First start a community CPR program and a community first aid program, and we provide training to young people, does that make them want to continue on? Would that then open some opportunities for them to become lifeguards, to have other opportunities for employment? One of our initiatives, which is admittedly long-term at Safety First, is to bring back that West Ward Volunteer Ambulance Squad. Imagine if we provided training to the residents and to the high school students in the West Ward and then offered them actual vocational training on our volunteer ambulance, which lets them give back to their community but also learn a trade. That means that they can then become employed as emergency medical technicians. That was the path that I chose. I worked as an EMT here at University Hospital for Newark EMS for years. That allowed me, as I said earlier, to help fund my college education. Teaching CPR and first aid classes, working as an EMT, gave me the stepping stones from my path. I believe that we can do that for other young people. And so what sets us apart at Safety First is the path that we have walked. All of the instructors that work with me are residents. They're from this area. They share a passion for helping others the same way that I do. And so what makes us different is who we are and where we are. We are Newark residents that want to give back to our community.
So there's this term that you use motor medic. Can you explain to our viewers what is motor medic? What does it mean? Is that a thing? Is that a project? Is that what is motor medic?
So a motor medic is an emergency medical technician on a motorcycle. And it's a program that started initially in Europe over a decade ago as a means of a fast response. Many times what a victim in an emergency needs is initial hands-on care. They need something to happen right now. The second thing they need is transportation to an advanced medical facility like a hospital. And so the faster we can get high quality care to someone, the better. And so motor medics then came to the United States and were very popular out in California. Now it's moved to New Jersey. We had a pilot program at Jersey City Medical Center a few years ago, which is now coming back. Here in Newark, the motor medic program is 2 years old. Safety First provides an emergency medical services motorcycle, which is available to the residents of the West Ward. When the Newark Police Department receives a call for aid, they notify Newark EMS. We're also notified, and since we are most times closer and able to respond faster, we're able to provide care quicker for someone who needs it. It can be the difference between life and death. Moments matter in an emergency. If you're the victim that has a very bad bleeding emergency, you need someone to stop that bleeding. And if that someone arrives 5 minutes sooner than that someone else, then your life may be saved versus lost. So motor medics is an amazing thing. It's life-saving on a motorcycle. I talked earlier about how things have come full circle for me. One of my influences in coming into this career was witnessing a motorcycle accident. And so today I ride a motorcycle and I respond to accidents. And prayerfully, my mother will not be mad at me because I will not be in a motorcycle accident. One of the things that helps me with this is to be a motor medic, you do need to have training. The training is becoming an emergency medical technician and learning how to provide care, but it's also going to police motorcycle school, taking the 80-hour training program that all police motorcycle officers have to take in order to ride an emergency vehicle that is a motorcycle. And so with the training that I received from Police Motor School and from the state of New Jersey's EMT program and the continuing education that I'm required to take to stay as a certified EMT, I'm able to provide care to our community in a faster way.
See, and this is why to you and to our viewers, I'm saying that we can really put a curriculum around just you teaching the subject, connecting all these dots as relate to EMS, EMT services, how we get there, who gets there first, what do you do when you get there, how it relate to all these things. I think that's important because young people do not connect the dots because they don't hear these kinds of conversations. In other communities that are not of low income, not predominantly black and brown, single head of household, working families who don't have a lot of time, you know, they are volunteers, and in the volunteer communities, these conversations take place on a regular basis, on the weekends at the breakfast table, during the evening after work, you know, at the dinner table when you come in from volunteering or doing your EMS stuff. So the language and the relationships make sense to people, so it's easier for them to get involved. I know South Orange, New Jersey still have, I believe, a very active volunteer ambulance corps up there. I believe they do, unless the fire department took it over. A lot of things been merging because of the lack of funding or lack of volunteers in many cases, more so than funding. So I think they have it. But you also have, and I may have this wrong, but it seems to me that you've had some conversation about Indians and the significance of a bike. Is there a relationship, or do I have that wrong?
It's very interesting. The majority of the police motor officers, they ride a Harley Davidson, but other departments choose different bikes. And so when we were considering putting together an EMS motorcycle unit, we looked at some of the motorcycle options, and there's some really pretty bikes out there. The BMWs are gorgeous bikes, but then we found Indian. Indian, like Harley-Davidson, is an American-made motorcycle company, and this is a horrible thing to admit on camera because it's out there forever and ever, but what sold us on the Indian was sitting on the Indian. We sat on the bike and it was the most comfortable thing we had ever been on. And if you're going to spend time working on a machine, responding to emergencies, comfort sometimes is important. And so we chose a bike that was very, very practical, but also very, very comfortable. And so it is something that also makes us different from others. You will see police motor officers on a Harley-Davidson, the Jersey City EMS motorcycle unit, they ride Harley-Davidsons, but the Newark Safety First motorcycle unit rides an Indian.
It's interesting because when I first heard it, I'm saying Indian, so I'm thinking maybe medical, going up wild and, stuff like this to get people well. And then when they started related to significance of a bike, and I'm like, okay, what does the Indian have to do with a bike? But for the viewers, I hope you understood what he said. That's the type of bike they ride. It's a name, okay? And it's comfortable. And for those bikers out there who are not EMS, EMT responders, you may want to try Indian anyway, because you're so used to looking at TV, running to the name brand stuff that you constantly hear, and everybody have one. You're not even comfortable. You're riding down the highway past me when I'm going to Trenton flying, and I see you twitching and trying to shape up and can't wait, going 100 miles an hour trying to get someplace where you can stop that bike. So try the Indian too, okay? So Dave, let's go back and talk about your business, because you have a business. Tell us more about the business itself. That's important for you to tell us. And I've yet to come across a business that someplace in the space of time, if you will, that did not have challenges. So why don't you talk about the businesses and some of the challenges that the business has been facing, okay?
You are correct. Every business faces challenges. Safety First is a minority-owned business first, so there is a challenge. We don't have all of the same resources that another non-minority owned business may have available to them. We're not as large as other companies, which means we may not be seen as attractive as another business. There's some name recognition that goes along with it. We're in a very, what I would say, competitive industry. We provide training and medical services. And so one thing we do is we offer CPR classes to businesses, schools, churches. One of the things we offer is lifeguard training services to pools, to summer camps. We provide medical staffing at events for things like festivals or parades. We provide medical standbys for television and film production. So we'll have a medic standing by in case something goes wrong. As a small minority-owned business, again, sometimes people want to go with the largest name possible. That doesn't always mean you're getting the best service possible. Once upon a time, it was the mom and pop shops which you knew would provide the best product and the best quality. And so that's something that we strive to provide at Safety First, is the best of what we can do. So if you're taking one of our CPR classes, we want to make sure it's the best class you've ever had. It's the one that's not going to make you stressed, that you're worried, am I going to pass? Will it be hard? Same thing with first aid. We try to minimize all of the concerns that people have when they come to our programs by making them feel welcome. I think that one of the ways that we're able to do that is our trainings are offered on site. And so we come to your location to give the training. So your employees, they're in their office space, so they feel comfortable. They're not going to some strange classroom to take the course. When we're doing lifeguard training, we try to do it at the pool that the facility uses. And so when we talked earlier about the community organizations here in the West Ward, UVSO is one of the places that we're hoping to host our CPR and first aid classes, so that members who are familiar with that organization will come to that organization to take training. A lot of what helps us at Safety First with some of these initiatives are the partnerships that we've made. Being part of the Ivy Hill Neighborhood Association and having their endorsement, having them talk about our trainings to their members and to the residents, having them talk to UVSO to say, hey, you might want to partner with Safety First to offer these community trainings. So what helps us to grow are the partnerships that we've made. What makes us different is that we want to make partnerships with our community. What helps our business then to grow is the fact that we have partnerships with our community. Yes, we're going to give away CPR and first aid training, but we will still continue to provide training to businesses that need it. But at some point, every business is able to give back and give away. We've decided that we can give back and give away this product and service without causing the downfall or the destruction of our overall training programs.
I think that's good, but we need to also enhance you and help you grow in programs like yours. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about relationships on the business side, okay? So first of all, do you work with municipalities as relate to getting contract awards or professional services type of dollars to maybe train employees or at all? Is there anything coming from government in terms of a relationship, any government, whether it's local, state, federal?
So as a minority-owned business, having that certification helps whenever there are programs that are made available for minority-owned businesses. We bid on whatever we can. For example, we have bid on the City of Newark's lifeguard training program, which is offered each year at the JFK pool here in the city. We've had the pleasure of running that program for the City of Newark several times. And so we'll continue to look for opportunities to expand. Again, expansion for our business means expansion for everyone, because if we grow, we're able to hire more instructors. And as I mentioned earlier, our instructors are local. They're community people. And we're actually looking to train our community residents to be instructors. That means if we've trained them to be instructors, we're willing to send them out for any contracts that we get, so that we've now employed more people. So our growth is everyone's growth. And then it always comes back to the more people we can train, we grow more, we train more, the more lives we're actually saving.
And that's the bottom line, saving the lives. And it's going to cost one way or the other to save. We might well invest it in our own communities and people, minority and women businesses in particular. And that's why New Jersey, the Legislative Black Caucus, has pushed and passed legislation, working with our other colleagues to do disparity studies, because a lot of set-asides that we can do for small and women businesses that we did in the past have been outlawed under the GR Corporation lawsuit and consent decree, which I won't get into, even though you have heard me mention this before. But I want to stay with Dave Morgan right now on Safety First. And so we understand that you do reach out and you're always looking for governmental contacts and opportunities to service government, et cetera. And I think that's important. What about relationships with healthcare institutions? So we know that healthcare institutions have response teams, if you will, but there seems to me that based on what you do, there seems that there may be some voids that you can fill with that without creating big union problems and all the kinds of problems you get when you go into those services. Is there a relationship with any of the healthcare institutions?
So with the City of Newark, we are part of the Medical Reserve Corps. And so if there is a disaster or an emergency here in our area, we're activated and we respond. In July, we reached out to University Hospital EMS, and I met with their special operations team to talk about the integration of our services with theirs. We're still trying to work out how that will happen. Currently, the Ironbound Ambulance Squad, they've integrated with University Hospital EMS, so University Hospital will then dispatch them to any emergency in the Ironbound section. We're hoping that University Hospital will start to dispatch the Safety First unit to respond with their ambulances to emergencies in the West Ward of Newark. Sadly, it's a process. Things take time, and one of the worst things that happens with processes that take time is there's a loss, and in this case, it's loss of life. the more emergencies we cannot respond to or we don't respond to because of some bureaucracy or some technical issue, means it's less people that we're able to assist in the emergency. When we talk about saving lives, for the viewers at home, you can think about something very, very simple. If you're having a family dinner at home and one of your relatives begins to choke at the dinner table, once we stop breathing, we have between 3 and 5 minutes before our brains are irreversibly damaged. And think about whether the ambulance is going to be able to get there in 3 to 5 minutes. And sadly, the answer is no. You would be the one that would be able to provide care. So the training we're looking to give will help you to do that. And if you haven't taken that training yet and you've made the phone call to 911 and 911 is able to call our motorcycle response unit, which can get there faster at times than an ambulance, then we're better able to help you save your family members. And so we are looking to make as many municipal partnerships as we can. We are licensed by the City of Newark to provide our care. They signed our emergency lights and siren permit that allows us to do what we do. We are certified by the state of New Jersey being a responder. We are, though, still working on integrating with the Newark Emergency Medical Services Department so that we can provide care better.
So let me ask you a question, because I don't like bureaucratic BS, I call it, okay? Armband been around a long time, so naturally a lot of people know them at UMDNJ, which is now University Hospital. I get that. But those decisions are made also by board members and by the CEO and the president coming together to figure out, and we know you have to work out what it is a unit would do, such as Armband, and you have to work out the liabilities, quote unquote. Does it require insurance? Are we jointly and severally liable? We get that. So it seems to me that the basic foundation for integration and the mere fact that they're integrated and working with Armband creates a foundation that can be modified if necessary to allow, quote unquote, a black business in. Now I'm gonna put it that way for the viewers. Yes, I said black business, okay? Because one of the problems that we have in New Jersey, and is that, and the governor got mad at me recently because I said that we patronize, the leadership patronizes black folk. We have the conversation, things sound good, we say we're gonna do it, never get done, but it happens all around our world. When we talk about women and minority businesses, there's always a setback. If we talk about women and minority businesses, and there is some growth, if you will, black businesses are still status quo. And so we have to emphasize black and then talk about black businesses and other ethnic minorities and women. And so that's a conversation we need to have off screen too and off stage, because I'm very much concerned about all the entities in Newark forming collaborations, including corporations, et cetera, with small businesses where there's a need to have the service rather than farming out to people not in town, people who grow their business by calling people like you in to be a part of to help them grow. Sometimes those businesses recognize that you're going to provide the services, and for them to get involved, they have to come see you. It's backwards, okay? And you have to go see the Armband, rather than the Armband have to come see you. And so these are the things I want our viewers to be aware of, that the Legislative Black Caucus members be fighting for throughout the state. And that's equitable participation. It's what we call social justice. It's what we call economic justice. And so we're going to continue to do that, because we have a lot of problems that can be minimized if we just give the people around us with the experiences to participate with us. To exclude, as David said, mean health care diminished or lives lost. So with that, I want to move forward and just ask you, David, if you can just maybe talk about business advice, because people talk about business advice that you can give to the viewers and those who, it doesn't have to be EMS or EMT business, but business advice across the board. There are some basic things you should know. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, David? We have about 5 or 6 minutes left, okay?
So I started a business at a very young age, and one of the things that I recognized is that one of the best ways to be successful is to not reinvent the wheel. If it's been done, then that's great, but find a way to make a better wheel. And so what I looked at was the training systems that were in place when I learned stuff. And I tried to figure out what's a better way to do this. And I think that one of the things that I did was to make the training more relaxed for people to take so that they are less stressed and they feel better about it. So my advice to someone who is starting a business is to, first off, figure out what you are good at. Figure out what you are passionate about. If you're just doing a job because it's the job, it's a job. But if you're doing something that you love and that you're passionate about, it becomes your passion, and you don't really mind getting up every day and going to work. And you want to find something that you love, that you're passionate about, that you can do well, and then that you can innovate. How can you put your own spin on something? How can you make it your own? How can you show that you are different from all of the other ones that are doing the same thing? And so my advice to a new business owner is find your passion, find your path, and don't be afraid to pursue it. As the senator said, there are many times when we get knocked back, when we face boundaries and hurdles and what we appear to be impenetrable walls in front of us. You need to find a way under, over, or around all of those barriers, because at the end of the day, it's about you, your personal growth, your life, your success, your joy, your passion, and your family. And so I am very fortunate that I have found a way to do something that I love to do. And it's something that allows me to put food on the table for my family at the end of the day. It's something that allows me to feel good at the end of the day, that I've accomplished something, that I've made a difference, and that I've made something better for someone somewhere.
So David, oftentimes we have a lot of young people watching the programs. Now I know that because people go out when I walk in the street and say, "Oh, Sweat, that's him. I saw him on TV. That's don't tell me you Mr. Rice." Yeah, Mr. Rice. Okay. So for the young people listening, okay, listen to David, and for the parents listening or the adults listening, listen to David and share it with the young people. What advice would you give young people watching this program? And because time is short, after you finish telling us what advice you would give, tell us more about some of the partnership organizations you may be affiliated with. Okay.
So young people, follow a dream. You have one. You know it. Sometimes people may try to defer you from it, but follow it. If you have that dream and you're holding on to it, make a plan. See your path, because there's a way to get there. My path was to help people save lives. That can be your path too. You can take a CPR class, you can take a first aid class. You can learn to become an emergency medical technician. You can then get a job that will pay you a salary that allows you to put food on your family's table. It can give you a career like I was given a career. And so we have so many initiatives that we're looking to bring forward. Our grand initiative, which I said earlier will take some time, is we want an ambulance. We want to provide services, but that ambulance also provides an amazing training ground for you young people. And so contact us now. Take a CPR and a first aid class with us right now, because you can be part of the growth and the development of this initiative. When we are running our responder programs, you can be in them. When we finally get an ambulance, you can be on it. You can take the training that will allow you to get a job, to earn a living, to have a career path, hopefully a career path that you love as much as I do.
So David, organizations talk about some, but I want to ask about the corporate side. Are you doing corporate training? Do you have contracts with corporations, regardless of who they are? The Horizon. We have a lot of corporations in Newark and in New Jersey.
We teach CPR at a lot of different companies here in Newark and in the state of New Jersey, schools, businesses. So yes, we have corporate contracts that allow us to be able to give back to the community.
Correct.
We have a bunch of neighborhood partnerships. I mentioned earlier the Ivy Hill Neighborhood Association is one of our strongest backers in helping us get the word out to our residents about the training programs that we offer. That doesn't mean that we're done with our affiliations or our associations. We want to work with everyone. And corporations, I'm sorry to do a shameless plug, but we would love to come and provide your CPR and your first aid training. So if you have a business here in New Jersey or in New York and you want someone to come and give a better CPR class than you've had in the past or a more dynamic first aid training that you've had before, contact us. You can find us very, very easily. Our website's probably the best one that was ever invented. It's thinksafety.com, because what should you do in the emergency but think safety? And so if you're looking for someone to do a program for you, or if you're looking for someone to stand by at your next event, please call us. We would love to be there.
And just share. And you may have an entity working with you right now, but figure out how to share the work with minority businesses. That's very important. That's something that we continue to insist on as African American elected officials, because we know that's part of our responsibility and mission to make sure there's equity. I know that the program is getting ready to end right now, David. Why don't you tell people how to get in touch with you and your organization if they need you?
Again, there's this magical place called the internet, and that's where you can find us. Our company is located here in the city of Newark. We are called Safety First, and you can find us on the internet at thinksafety.com, because in an emergency, you should always think safety.
Think Safety First. I want to thank all the viewers who are tuned in today and ask you to tune in again next week at the same time on the same stations throughout the state. I want to thank Mr. David Morgan for taking the time to come out and share this information with you. On behalf of the members of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus, I'm your State Senator Ronald Rice, Chairman of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. Have a good day.